jumped out for a minute.
Okay. You know, occasionally he has to fill in for Director Strickler, so we'll see. I think just a couple more people and then we'll be able to get started. Also looking for Greg if you see him there on the attendees list.
It looks like we did have Brendan join us. Welcome, Brendan. Could do a quick sound check. Looks like Brendan is slowly connecting. While we wait, welcome Janelle. You wouldn't mind doing a quick sound check for us?
Hi there, Josh. Can you hear me?
I hear you well. Thank you.
Great. Good afternoon, everyone.
Looks like Mr. Berkman has joined us as well. Do you want to do a quick sound check?
I am here. Thank you.
Excellent. Thank you so much.
Can I ask JC, are you here for Doug Kelsey at this point?
No, I'm not.
So I think as soon as Doug arrives, JC stays with the attendees list. Josh, okay? Okay,
Perfect.
great.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks for joining us today. And I was going to ask Brendan if you knew if Director Strickler was going to be able to be here for the 1 o'clock, or will you be in for a bit for him?
I expect Director Strickler to be with us shortly. In the interim, I will fill his role.
Okay. We are still waiting
there
for
he
a
is.
few.
There he is.
Such great timing. Thank you. There he is.
You bet.
And to everyone, we're officially on live stream and the meeting's open. We are just waiting for a few more people. And so for the folks in the audience, attendees, panelists, everybody welcome. We'll just be waiting another minute or two till we have our full panel of executive steering group members with us. And I see Greg Johnson in the attendees list. So if somebody could kindly promote him in, I think he'd be happy to join.
Okay, I am here and Deb.
Great. So great to see you, Greg. Thank you. And good audio with us. It's hard to be floating out there in Zoom land, so we're glad you landed. Anybody see Ed Washington on the attendees list? Just one last member will be able to begin. It's a little bit of a challenge sometime logging in. I think if it's okay, oh, go ahead, Josh.
It does look like we had General Manager Kelsey join us.
Oh, great. Okay.
Welcome.
Do you see Doug? Have we done our sound check?
Hi, Doug. If you are able to do a quick sound check, we see you well.
Hello and happy new President's Day.
Yes. Welcome, Doug. Did you do a sound check with Director Strickler yet? I want to make sure he's got audio.
Welcome, Director Strickler.
Good afternoon, everybody.
All right, you have audio. So here's what I'm going to suggest, if it's okay. Gilly, I'm going to have you keep watching for Ed. All I'm going to do are the webinar instructions, which I think is something we can share with everybody briefly. And then, Greg, I'll hand it over to you to start the meeting, okay? So we have just a couple slides, and good afternoon, everyone. This is Deb Noodleman, facilitator for the Executive Steering Group and part of the IVR team. So glad to be here with everyone. And I just have a few introductory slides. I know so many of you have been on webinars before, but it's nice just to do this checklist quickly. And once again, we wish we could be in a room with you. We hope you're staying safe and healthy, and off we go with the meeting. We do have available closed caption in both English and Spanish. And on the screen right now, it's also on the website. You should be able to find it, we hope, easily, whether you're here in the audience on the Zoom meeting or on the YouTube live stream. You can click on the link and you follow the instructions to help be able to view in both English and Spanish with captions in a separate browser. And next slide, Josh. There's a way for you when you're in the live stream to look at the closed captions down at the bottom of your screen. This is actually when you're in the Zoom meeting, right, Josh? You can click down at the bottom on the closed caption. There's a menu, and then it turns it on for you. Okay, so we hope that's helpful and useful to everyone. And just a few more things, which again, gentle reminders. We really appreciate everybody being here today. We're hoping that you're picking a way to listen in and view by webinar. So pick audio either by phone or computer, not both. And panelists, which we kindly see that you're doing, go ahead and keep your video on. We try as hard as possible to feel like we're sitting around a table with each other. And the way we have set this up for executive steering group members is those of you that currently have your screens on are actually our executive steering group members. Your presenters are here with you in your virtual room, but they leave their screen off until it's time to present, just to give you a little more feeling of being with each other around a table. We do just gentle reminder, keeping your audio on mute when you're not talking, remembering to turn it off and get yourself back so we can hear you when it's time, but we'll help. Don't worry about it. All right. And if for some reason, and this goes to anybody that's listening to my voice right now, if you're having any kind of technical difficulties, call or text the phone number here, which is 253-241-0131. 253-241-0131. Okay, so just a few things to help us get going. I want to see, Greg, can I ask, oh, let me do this one too. I'll get through this slide and then we'll see about getting started. So many of you have already been with us during the prep meetings, the early kickoff meetings at the end of last year, and we will always provide brief opportunity for public input during each of our meetings. So towards the end of the meeting, we have 10 minutes available for public input. If you do want to provide public input in another format, you can do that by emailing to info@interstatebridge.org and make sure to put ESG public comment in the subject line. You can also call, there's a phone number, and you can leave a voicemail message that will be transcribed, and that's 360-905-1560. 360-905-1560. And make sure to state ESG public comment in your message. And we want to assure you that whether you submit public comment in advance, during the meeting, or after, all of your input is transmitted to executive steering group members. So anything received to date has already been sent to them. They'll hear more today briefly at the meeting. And then if you don't have an opportunity to provide input here today, please feel free to do so afterwards. And in the many other public venues for providing input. Okay, so that covers us on the public input. And then the next slide has to do, Greg, with starting. And I just want to see if Co-Chair Washington has arrived. And you help me, Greg, if you want to get going with your introductory remarks or wait another minute or so.
Why don't we get going in respect for everyone's time. So once again, I'd like to welcome everybody to our executive steering group meeting. This is a critically important part of the Interstate Bridge program, how we are going to make decisions. This team is going to be key critical in reviewing and putting their ideas on the table for how we move forward. So with that, this is going to be a very information dense meeting. We have a lot of things that we need to cover and update you on. So we've been talking to the bi-state legislative group since the last we talked, and we updated them on the community advisory group as well as the equity advisory groups in our effort to staff those two. So you're going to hear about that. You're going to hear about our website that launched last Friday, January 15th. And there, we are shifting from first gear into second gear and going into a very public phase of the IBR program. So we're moving, and we're moving quickly. Another thing that you are going to hear about today is purpose and need, and vision and values. And this is going to be a key foundational piece that we have to get established, and that will be the springboard from where we derive different alternatives and start the narrowing down of what the program will look like and what this will do. So these things are, once again, we're entering into that very public sphere. So the website is going to be tremendously important. And you see on your screen that it has the URL for the website. And we ask that you take a look at it. It has a very robust question and answer. But this is, we're shifting, and we're going to be, I told you before, we were walking fast. We're going to start running at this point. So with that, Deb, I'll flip it back over to you for to start getting into the meat of the issues.
Great. Thank you so much, Greg. Appreciate it. So we do want to leave some time for warming up the room if we can. So I'd love to head around the table, give each of you executive steering group members a chance to introduce yourself, and if you have any updates, news to share since we last met on November 30th. And I'd like to first go to Director Strickler, if I could, and then I'll go to Secretary Millar.
My apologies, Deb, as I fumble with mute. So good afternoon, everybody. I'll be very brief and just say thank you again for your time and dedication to this important program. I'm always eager to hear Secretary Millar as well. He's always got something very poignant to say, and I appreciate that about him very much, as well as the rest of the group. So looking forward to the discussion. I would say a general off-topic update is just the note of everything that's going on in the world right now, especially as it relates to Oregonians. I would just simply say we're in the midst of responding to wildfire. We're in the midst of responding to significant unrest in different places of our state and of the nation. And I'm really working hard, as well as the rest of the ODOT team, to approach many of our things from the sense of compassion and recognition that everybody's experiencing things on a different level right now. So that's my opening remark. Thank you very much for being here. I appreciate your time and energy to this important project and program. And that's it. I'll turn it over to Mr. Millar.
Good afternoon. Thank you, Chris, and thank you all for being here this afternoon. Looking forward to our conversation today. It gives me a break from our legislative session, which is where I am spending my time. And I would try to say something important, but I heard our youth poet laureate this morning, and nothing today will top that. So it's a good day. Good to be here. Thanks.
Thank you both and welcome. And now I'll head around for our regional partners next. So City of Portland and then City of Vancouver.
Hi, Sonia Szymanski, Deputy Chief of Staff for Mayor Ted Wheeler. Happy Inauguration Day to everybody. I have an update from the city. Most of you probably know that in our very special form of government, Portland City Council members directly oversee portions of the city. We have a new transportation commissioner, Commissioner Joanne Hardesty. We have not yet sorted out as between her office and the mayor's office who is going to be lead representative at this table, but we will get that confirmed and over to you in writing in advance of the next meeting.
Thank you so much. City of Vancouver.
Good afternoon. Good afternoon. This is Ann McInerney, Mayor for the City of Vancouver. And I can't wait to see Ted at the table, so give him our very best. It is an absolutely glorious day. I thought Roger would steal our excitement that Representative Fye presented the #1 project for the House transportation package in Olympia. the only project that was actually named, and that is the I-5 bridge for $1 billion with a B dollars. So we're absolutely ecstatic about that. But I'm also excited to see all the faces around this group little table here, because as a region, we're getting together to solve some problems. And I hope this regional approach continues after we build the bridge and cut the ribbon. Thank you so much.
Thank you and welcome. And next up, if I could, Southwest Washington Regional Transportation Council, following them Metro.
Hi, I'm Scott Hughes. I'm chair of the Southwest Washington RTC. And again, we are with Ann. We are excited to hear what our project is. Number one, the RTC has always supported a solution on the I-5 bridge. And our one priority is let's get it done quick.
Welcome. And President Peterson.
Hi, Lynn Peterson, Metro Council President. I would say that Metro, while wanting to see the bridge replaced, wants to make sure that we do it at a pace where everybody can be brought along, updated, and make sure that we get consensus as we move forward. So we are looking forward to the replacement and to a project that keeps us on a regional balance. So thank you.
Thank you and welcome. So TriMet and then CTran.
There you go. Yes, Doug Kelsey with TriMet. Like Sonia at the City of Portland. So just on the staffing side, I think most people are aware, but I'm going to be retiring here over the next month or so. And so I'll be submitting another name as a backfill for myself. There will be an interim at some point until they get the long-term replacement put in through a normal process that TriMet's board is undertaking already. So that's on the people side, and nothing else to add that hasn't been already added onto the bridge side itself, other than this is a really important project for the region.
Well, thank you for your service, Doug, and we'll miss you. CTran?
Sean Donegan with CTran. I would just echo the mayor and Chair Hughes's comments with the RTC about the project being ranked 1 in the state. That's a huge barrier for us to push across. So I'm excited to see that. No real new updates from CTran other than to say, just want to say that I appreciate the work being done by all of the groups involved. I really like the pace that we're moving at. I'm excited to see that we're kicking it into high gear and moving forward on this much needed project.
Thank you very much. Next up, Port of Portland and Port of Vancouver.
Hi, Kristen Leonard with the Port of Portland. And Doug, first and foremost, we have not had the opportunity in person to just say congratulations for you, but definitely very disappointing news for all of the rest of us as to your retirement from TriMet. And the only other thing that I would add to all of the thank yous and the importance of the project is a thank you to Greg. He jumped very quickly at a request that we had to come do an informal briefing for our Port Commission, just to kind of talk about the structure and what has been set in motion. And we just very much appreciate Greg's willingness to come do that with our commissioners. So thank you.
Thanks very much. Port of Vancouver.
Hello, everyone. Juliana Marler, CEO for the Port of Vancouver. Just want to echo what my fellow Southwest Washington agencies mentioned. Really appreciate our legislators recognizing this project as being a priority, and all the efforts that has been made to get us so prepared for these meetings. So thank you, and I have nothing else to add.
Well, thank you and welcome. And I just want to check if Ed Washington was promoted. Lynn, I'll be with you in just one sec. I haven't had a chance to look. No, okay, we have a message out to him just to make sure he's doing okay. All right, go ahead, Lynn.
Well, maybe on behalf of both of us, I just want to say, as co-chairs of the Community Advisory Group,
It's an honor to be a part of this organization. It's an honor to be a part of this important effort. And maybe most importantly, it's an honor to represent the many voices of our community. So just excited to be here. Thank you.
Really appreciate it. And thank you for that, Lynn, on behalf of both of you. All right. Well, we're so honored to be with all of you and for your making time and space for this important endeavor. And it's always a pleasure to hear from you and to hear the words that you're sharing. So welcome and glad to get going. I'm going to take just a few more minutes of our opening time to walk through the agenda with all of you. And so Josh, if you go ahead. We hope everybody saw these materials in advance. The agenda is always posted to the IBR website. We hope people saw it there. And I just want to echo what Greg said. We are definitely running. We're so excited to be with you here today. This is the official kickoff. The meetings that happened last year were really organizational meetings, if you will. And today really is the day that the doors are open wide. And we hope for the publics and the audience listening here today, all the motivated and mobilized stakeholders, and especially with our executive steering group members, that we share the enthusiasm of this endeavor and this opportunity really to come together. So the first topic on your agenda is a decision space. And so at your organizational meetings, you heard about the approach proposed for standing up both a community advisory group and an equity advisory group. And we have a decision space today on the work that's been done to stand up and to seat the community advisory group. So we're really excited for that team to be able to share their efforts since you last met, to take your questions that you might have, any feedback, and then we will call the question, and I will head once around the table where we are seeking your alignment and concurrence on the membership of the community advisory group. Our next big topic is an informational piece on standing up of the equity advisory group. And we'll hear about that team's work since you last met to both put out the word, to bring on membership and to be able to seat the equity advisory group. And that piece will happen in an informational context. That one comes through at the programmatic level. So it's not a seeking concurrence through the executive steering group. It's informational to this group. And of course, always interested in any feedback, questions, information you want to share. Then beginning the work and rolling up your sleeves and getting into the programmatic effort, we have really a framing out of the efforts for both updating purpose and need and establishing community vision and values for the Interstate Bridge Replacement Program. Two really pivotal, and if you think about them, pylons going into the ground to help give a firm hold on the approach going forward. And so it's a really important opening and sharing of the who, what, when, where, how, and why you do purpose and need and vision and values. And we hope, again, taking some of your questions and as importantly, getting your advice for how to do this right, how to do it well, and how to engage with best practices. We then have, upon request, an informational piece on the conceptual finance plan that was presented to the Bi-State Legislative Committee in December. So just a short update on that one. Lots of information already out on the web and lots of presentations, but again, a chance for it to be shared here with all of you and take any questions you have. Then we will have that 10-minute section towards the end, an opportunity for public input that I described. I do want to remind folks that if you want to give public input, you need to be in the Zoom portion of the meeting, not on the YouTube or the TV live streams. There you can only listen and observe. If you want to actually be promoted to be able to speak and make public input, come on over to the Zoom portion and we'll ask for hands to go up when we get there, and then we'll have the comment then. The time's going fast, and so about 5 minutes before 3 o'clock, we will pause on substance. We'll confirm upcoming meeting topics, any next steps that have been identified, summarize, and adjourn no later than 3 o'clock. Anybody questions? Kind of wave a hand if you have any questions. No? So the gentle reminders are, as always, just remembering to honor the agenda, listen to understand and ask questions to clarify, hard on the problem, soft on the people, seeking common ground, and just balance the speaking time, which you see I have a tendency to head a once around the table, and I try to change direction once in a while and mix it up. So always feel free to jump in though, wave your hand or just speak. We want to make this your conversation. Okay. So I think we're ready. I just want to look to our executive steering groups. Any questions before we jump in? All right. Then I think, Greg, I want to hand it back over to you to go ahead and introduce this section. Thank you. Hang on, you're on mute, Greg.
So this is one of the important legs of the decision-making stool that we have established for the program, the Community Advisory Group. So we have been in the process of reaching out and interviewing, and both Lisa Shower and Jonelle Bell are going to give you a sketch of some of the efforts that we went through to get a team that's representative of both communities that we think is going to provide outstanding service to the program. So with that, I'm going to flip it over to Lisa and Jonelle.
Great. Well, thank you, Greg, and good afternoon, everyone. My name is Jonelle Bell, and I am a co-chair of the Community Advisory Group, as well as Chief Equity Officer for the program. And as Greg indicated, we have the distinct privilege of kind of giving you an overview of the Community Advisory Group, and more importantly, provide a list of both individuals as well as organizations that resulted from our collective process. So next slide, please. Just a quick note before I share material on this slide. Just want to give an additional shout out to Lynn Valenter as well as Ed Washington for being phenomenal co-chairs for the program and for the Community Advisory Group. Both Ed and Lynn, as well as Greg Johnson, served as a selection panel for both the organizational appointments as well as the at-large applicants. And so just a reminder, working with all of you, and again, big thanks to the executive steering group, as well as all of your staff who have been deeply engaged in working with us to make sure we're reaching out to the right organizations. We started off with 300 potential community-based organization partners for consideration. In conjunction with the selection committee, we went on that list based on refined appointment criteria. And you'll recall we had a pretty expensive list of criteria that we really wanted to winnow the list down to. The facilitators, both Lisa and I, we met with 22 finalists, organizations to extend an invitation to join the Community Advisory Group. For the at-large applicants, we had an open online application from December 1st through December 27th. We had 5 information sessions that we offered, and interpretation was made available. I will say that we really work, part of the element, the core tenet that we all have been advancing is to center this program through equity, through the lens of equity. And one way in which that sort of showed up was the way in which we did recruitment, as well as created intentional opportunity for our whole community to really participate in this process. So we were thrilled to have 5 information sessions in various languages. We had online print and media recruitment. We sent out postcards through various through the corridor, various folks through the corridor. We had over 498 completed applications we received. Applications were screened and reviewed during the week of December 28th, and interviews with top applicants began on January 5th. Next slide, please. So the CAG organizational appointments, as I indicated, we were really looking at a number of things, one of which is balance of membership from both states, 80% residing locally, organizations that can represent more than one stakeholder group, members who are from communities of color, members who are users of the bridge or will be impacted by the program, members who are users of the regional transportation network, and members of various age demographics. So really trying to balance all of those factors was sort of the task that lied ahead. Next slide, please. And so now the moment that we've all been waiting for, I'll briefly touch upon the organizational appointments. Here's a list of the folks the organizations that we've invited to participate in the community advisory group, starting with Coalition of Communities of Color. Marcus Mundy, who's the executive director there, will be representing the coalition. We've also extended an invitation to the Confederate Tribes of Grand Ronde. We're waiting to find out who the final representative will be there. We've extended an invitation to the Native American Youth and Family Center. We're still in conversations to identify who the representative will be from a neighborhood association, but we've had a number of constructive conversations to determine who that rep will be. The Oregon Environmental Council, Diana Nunez, who's the executive director, will be attending on behalf of OEC. The Oregon State Building and Construction Trades, you'll note that we have representatives both from the Oregon as well as the Washington State building trades to really speak to the importance that the construction of this bridge will have not only on our economy, but to the workforce in our region. Robert Camarillo will be representing the Oregon State Building Trades. We have the Oregon Trucking Association. Jenna Jarvis will be representing the Oregon Trucking Association. Ashton Simpson, who's the newly lamented executive director for Oregon Walks, will be representing Oregon Walks. And we're having conversations with Portland Business Alliance in terms of who their representative will be, but we know that they will be seated as well. And then just a note, we did have a robust conversation at the staff leadership group level around the need to have public transit representative. And as Greg has directed us, based on that feedback, to identify a representative on both the Oregon as well as the Washington side to really bring that public transit representative. And we have been having good conversations with your staff, particularly City of Portland Metro and City of Portland and Metro, as well as TriMet, to help us think through who the representative on the Oregon side will be. So with that, next slide, please. Looking at regional, there were a couple of seats who really spoke to not 100% Oregon or 100% Washington, but really had kind of a regional approach. So we heard loudly and clearly around the need to have kind of a strong regional perspective, particularly around the 205 corridor. And so we've invited Jeffrey Temple, Director of Corporate Affairs, Fred Myers, who, of course, Fred Myers has both a significant employee presence in Oregon as well as in Washington, and certainly traverse both I-5 as well as 205. We've invited the Oregon Association of Minority Entrepreneurs, also referred to as OAMI. The name does not speak to the significance it also has in Southwest Washington, really being supportive and helping to stand up small businesses on both sides of the river. So we'll have representation from that organization. And then to round us off, the Pacific Northwest Waterways Association, the regional director, the head of government affairs, Dina Horton, will be representing us there. So with that,
Janelle, can I interrupt for one sec to see if Secretary Millar, is this a clarifying question to Janelle?
Yes, it was a clarifying question. Back on the transit representatives, we're talking about transit riders, correct?
That is correct, Secretary.
Okay.
We're looking for representative who can speak to the experience of being a transportation rider.
Okay. Yeah.
But I'll yield to Greg in case I botched that in any fashion.
As a former patron of the number 5 bus, I'm glad to hear that.
No, Jonelle, that was absolutely right. We are looking for someone who is a user of the system.
Good. Thank you.
So with that, I turn it over to my colleague and co-facilitator, Lisa Schauer.
So we're going to take a look at the Washington side of our organizational appointments, and we're starting with Clark College. Dr. Karen Edwards is the president and uniquely joining the advisory group with her recent experience as the president of the Cascade campus of Portland Community College. So we feel pretty excited to have her perspective from both sides of the river, newly resident of Vancouver, Washington. Our Columbia River Economic Development Council has chosen Michelle Brewer, who is the Vice President of Human Resources and Facilities for Zoom Info, which is an employer in downtown Vancouver with about 1,200 employees, many of which, or most of which, are in Vancouver. The CRADC seat is actually a seat that represents a bit of a coalition with the Southwest Washington Business Organization. So also links with the Greater Vancouver Chamber of Commerce and Identity Clark County. We have representation from the Cowlitz Indian tribe. This is part of our government to government work and the consultation that happens between the tribe, as well as their interest in serving as a member of our community on this advisory group. So we are really happy to have them participate as well. Human Services Council, Michael Kelly, who is the Director of Transportation. This organization really is a social services agency that helps with the delivery of community services, transportation services. So they do bring a bit of that transit perspective. Many of the individuals that they work with also utilize our public transportation system. LULAC, we have Javier Navarro. He is the owner of State Farm Insurance, which is along our 4th Plain corridor. LULAC is also in a bit of a coalition with the Hispanic Chamber and 4th Plain Forward. That group together wanting to ensure that their voice is represented at the table. Our neighborhood association, which is also, our neighborhood association is tied closely and linked with our Neighborhood Transportation Safety Alliance, which is out of the city of Vancouver. We have Michael Martin Tellis. In similar format, with the interest to have a public transit representative from the Oregon side. We also have heard from our partners that the experience from a public transit perspective from Southwest Washington is a little different, and therefore we'll be also actively seeking another voice at the table to represent that Southwest Washington perspective. We have Vancouver NAACP, Jasmine Tolbert, who is the president and will be serving on behalf of that chapter. I also just wanted to mention Jasmine is also a member of the HR team for Vancouver Clinic, which is an employer here in Southwest Washington. And so while she's representing the chapter, she also brings with her some perspective as a Vancouver resident and part of a really important one of our many businesses over in Southwest Washington. The Washington State Building and Construction Trade Council will have Mark Riker, who participates in that role. And I think it's also important to share, I know Janelle mentioned on the Oregon side of the river, this particular seat also does represent the Columbia Pacific Building and Construction Trades Council. So again, we have a little bit of a theme here. There's just not enough seats for everyone at this table. There's a ton of different opportunities to engage in our community outreach and to be involved in providing input through our community advisory group. But we did look for, on the organizational appointment side, any coalitions that we could form where like-minded organizations could come together with one person participating as a member of the community advisory group. We have the Washington Trucking Association, Sherry Call. And then last we have Workforce Southwest Washington, Kevin Perkey, and this also represents another coalition. So he is not only representing his organization in Southwest Washington, but also representing Work Systems, Inc. in Portland and the Clackamas Workforce. So that is our slate of organizational appointments from the Southwest Washington side. Pause for a second. Okay, next slide. So now we're going to kind of pivot and transition into the at-large appointments. Just as a reminder, we had 4 positions that we were looking for to fill from the Oregon side of the river and 4 from Washington. We were thrilled with the response that we received. We had 498 applicants, and again, only 8 seats available. It made it challenging to go through all of the applications. And so before we even closed the date of the applications, we already had a process put in place. And it was really important that we were centering equity, that we were going through our process that included both an initial screening and an essay review without seeing any of the names of applicants. This was done with that screening criteria, the membership criteria that was mentioned early on that was part of this framework. As we went through all of the applications, we then started to look at the essay responses. We were able to narrow down that 498 applicants to about 22. And then we spent another long day with the selection committee, having them go through essay questions and look to see if we had, cross-checked the stakeholder interests with what each of the individuals were representing in the responses that they provided in the application. From that group, they narrowed the list of candidates down to 12, and then went to all 12 of those applicants and held brief interviews. I do think it's important to share, and I know John L. mentioned this early on, that we're just tremendously pleased with how much time and effort our selection committee has put into this. It really does take quite a bit of time to go through all of these interviews, and we were in the midst of a couple holidays. So we appreciate their active involvement in selecting those members that will represent both states. Next slide. So we've arrived at the 4 at-large members from Oregon and Washington. And Janelle, do you want to introduce the Oregon, and I'll mention the Washington?
Well, I think the best way to introduce them is to show you the list. What I will say is I believe we did pass along biographical information on each of these individuals. And so I think all of you should have that material. But it's such a great group of folks is what I'll say in terms of the depth and breadth of sort of lived experience, as well as personal and professional experience. We have both racial as well as ethnic diversity and gender diversity. So really a terrific list of folks. Lisa?
I just thought that we would also add that one of the best opportunities to connect with the community is to call and say, hey, we'd love for you to serve on this advisory group. And both Janelle and I were met with responses as if we were giving them a trip to Disneyland. So it was with some real excitement and passion around the fact that they had been chosen. And I think that certainly the amount of interest in being involved in this advisory group also, is part of that scenario where you are actually chosen to be one of those 4 members from either side of the river. One of the conversations that I had was with a gentleman who will be serving, who said, as I was riding my bike over the bridge this morning, I thought about what the opportunity was to actually work on replacing this bridge and connecting 2 communities. So it's those sorts of things that we get pretty excited about when we bring a community advisory group together. I think you're also going to see with these 8 names that they are not the names of folks that serve on every advisory group within both regions, that we really tried to go out and look for broad representation. It was also very difficult. There are a lot of individuals that all had important perspectives, and we hope that we can continue to engage with that larger group because we need all of that input as we move our program forward. Next slide. We thought it was important to share a little bit about some of the demographics. And so as you can see on this slide, we have a really good mix of different race and ethnicities showing up on our community advisory group. We don't have all of the members selected, as you saw early in the initial slides. And so this does represent the 24 that have been officially confirmed. But as you can see, there is a really good mix of different perspectives. Next slide. We also wanted to ensure that we had a good mix of men and women. This is based on how our applicants self-identified. Next slide. And we also wanted a perspective based on a multi-generational lens. So we know that some of us are interested in building a bridge that we hope to use for a while, but I suspect those in the 16 to 24 and 25 to 34 range are going to use it for a little longer. And so that was part of what we were trying to achieve here. And we were really pleased that we do have at least one community advisory member in each one of these age demographics. Next slide. We also looked at where are all of our community advisory group members? Where do they call home? And the program area was an important part of what we wanted to see show up in our advisory group members. It certainly is important to our region. It's different if we're talking about a bridge that might be in your backyard. If you live within the program area, it certainly provides a heightened level of interest to be involved in understanding how this replacement program is moving forward. So this is just a bit of a heat map in terms of where each of those member zip codes are from. Next slide. We looked at some of the self-identified commuter and travel habits. And so we think that it is important to be able to highlight that there are 6 members that do actively use transit, 3 that bike, and 23 that use their personal vehicle to travel. We have super commuters that travel from Vancouver to Washington County and to Tigard. We have reverse commuters that live in Portland and that drive over to Southwest Washington. We just have a variety of different community advisory members that access the bridge. Next slide. Jonelle, do you want to wrap us up?
Sure. And as we have been saying, we are building the plan and flying at the same time. And so as soon as we invited folks to participate on the group, we were sharing with them that our first meeting is actually coming up next week. And so both our community advisory group as well as our equity advisory group will convene for first meetings starting on Monday, January 25th. Our EAG will meet 5:30 to 7:30 p.m. And then our community advisory group will convene on January 27th from 4 to 6 p.m. We will have a combined orientation of the EAG and the CAG. Again, part of how we want to both center equity as well as create that cross-pollination. We'll have an orientation on Saturday, January 30th from 10 a.m. to 3 p.m. And of course, members of the public are invited to observe with an opportunity for public comment. Meeting details will be shared on the program's website and is here for your reference as well. Next slide. So Deb, we are going to turn it over back to you, and Lisa and I will stay here and answer any questions or receive any comments that folks might have.
Great, thank you so much. And Doug, I know it looks like you have a question, and before I opened up to questions, I wanted Lynn, I was looking, I don't think Ed has been able to join us, but I was wondering if you wouldn't mind on behalf of the co-chairs, just speaking to your roles and your perspective at this point, just to wrap up on the presentation piece. Thank you.
Certainly. I think it was a wonderful process in that the intake was tremendous. So the outreach was thoughtful, broad, and deep. And then to get 500 applicants was truly overwhelming in many ways, and also gratifying. So narrowing those down, one of the challenges that we had is we wanted to have broadly defined diversity across the committees, but we couldn't know until we made draft selections. And so interviewing the individuals who had raised their hand and gotten to an interview stage was just so gratifying. People are so excited about the bridge project, what it can mean, the questions asked about their view of region, of the region. People were really just interested in being part and learning more and having the conversation. They were excited to be able to share their perspectives and their kind of unique take on it. So I would say that everyone who participated ended up feeling really good about the process. I think everyone felt heard. It was also difficult to narrow our choices down because the people that raised their hands were just really high caliber. And in many ways, it just ended up being the coalescing of the advisory group kind of across all of the possible members and having to only settle for 8. But it was a very rich process. It was not a data-driven process. It started there and then went to more qualitative measures.
Really appreciate that. Thank you. And thank you to both you and Ed for the huge amount of time and effort in doing this work. Much appreciated. So let's open it up for questions. So Doug, go ahead, and people can put up their little hand on their screen if they want to, or I'll check around. Go ahead, Doug.
Yeah, no, thank you for this. Is a lot of work just to get this far. So congratulations. I am curious around the comments made around the sort of some of the super transit users. I think you referred to 6 of them in the screening process. And one of the other earlier slides, it talked about a transit representative for CTRAN and for the TriMet side, Oregon, Washington side. I am curious, in your screening, was there anybody who represented the community with disabilities?
So I can tackle that question. Yes, we do have, and I'm going to get the name of the group wrong, so I won't try, but they are going to be a part of the Equity Advisory Group. And we also interviewed a number of folks who self-identified as having a disability for the CAG in general. So that segment will be represented in both elements, both the CAG as well as the EAG.
Were any of them extensive transit users?
Yes. So we had one vision impaired person who rode transit extensively in Vancouver, as well as over into Portland.
Okay, great. Thank you. Thanks, Greg.
Okay, Secretary Millar.
Well, Doug stole my thunder. That was going to be my question, just having representation from the disability community on both sides of the river. The Washington School for the Blind and the School for the Deaf are in Vancouver, and just wanted to make sure, and a lot of them are actively traveling around our region. Wanted to make sure that they had a seat at the table and a voice.
So if I can ask Lisa or Janelle, what's the group that we were looking at for CAG, and they wanted to go on to EAG?
Yeah, Disability Rights Oregon. We extended an invitation to DRO, as they're referred to, and after discussions with them regarding both the EAG as well as the CAG, they felt that the the Equity Advisory Group would be more appropriate for the issues that they care about. But as Greg pointed out, that will also be represented on the CAG, the perspective of paying attention to those with disabilities.
Any other questions, concerns? I will, after we take this piece, I'm going to head once around the virtual table when we call the question, but just any final check-ins? Okay, so Greg, you want to go ahead and call the question, the one we have here on the slide?
So we've walked you through our extensive process to reach this point in the community advisory group. So what we are looking for is your concurrence today on the community advisory group membership. What this will do, this will allow us to have our meetings with fully staffed or fully personed groups. So that is the question we have on the table. Is there ESG concurrence today on the community advisory group membership?
Awesome. Thanks, Greg. And let me give one quick clarification. When you saw those TBDs, the to be determined next to the, seeking a name for an organization, today what we're asking about is your concurrence around those organizations. So they will choose a person to represent that organization, but it's concurrence on both the at-large appointments and the organizational appointments. All right. And then the last piece is I was hoping, Lynn Valenter, I'll give you a heads up if you could. I was going to have you go first on behalf of both of the co-chairs, if it's okay, in case there's anything else you want to say. And are you comfortable speaking on behalf of Ed and yourself, having both been spending those many, many hours together? Or you can tell us. It would help to know if there'd be concurrence from. I know. I don't mean to make you speak for him, but if you're comfortable. All right, so we'll have you go first, and then I'm just going to ask each of you. Okay, and remember here, we seek consensus because we're looking for joint interests, we're looking for alignment, we're looking for your messaging with each other back to the program, out to the community. So you're welcome to say a few words if you want to, but that's what it means to seek concurrence. Go ahead, Lynn.
Well, I think on behalf of Ed and myself, who were part of the 3-person selection committee, it was a rigorous process. It was, we all invested a great deal of time and energy, including all of the applicants. And so if you're asking for my concurrence on the community advisory board group membership that's been presented, I would say on behalf of Ed and I, we were in full concurrence all the way through the process, and that continues.
Okay, thank you so much, and much appreciated. And I'm not going to do my list backwards this time, so I'm going to ask for Port of Vancouver and then Port of Portland. Juliana?
Yes, so I do want to say that I am incredibly impressed with the process and the amount of time spent in the selection, and feel that there was a great deal of interests and diversity in the list that I saw. And just as a note, this is the first time that I'm seeing the list, and so I don't have a background on some of the individuals, but based on what I'm hearing, I do support the list.
Okay, thank you for that. Port of Portland and then CTRAN.
We're in concurrence with the list, and I just have to do a shout out to everyone. This is extraordinary work. 500 applications down to 24. That is no small feat, and it's very impressive what you were able to put together, and having individuals who were willing to engage in this process that brought a lot of different perspectives for each chair that sitting at that virtual table, at least for now, I think is really impressive. So thank you all for the amazing work on this.
Appreciate the words. Thank you, Kristen. So next up, CTRAN and then TriMet.
Yeah, we definitely concur with the list. I would echo the same sentiment. Big shout out to this group. I was extremely impressed with the diversity and making sure that we're represented on all levels. I think that's going to be critically important as we go forward. So kudos to the group. Amazing work, and we do support.
Thank you so much. TriMet and then Metro.
Yeah, piling on, I'll just say very supportive. I would suggest as we try and fill on both sides, both states, the transit representative, the selection of it really is, what's the profile of a transit rider? Well, we carry 300,000 a day on our system. I just would encourage, don't pick those with specific interests, because this is a very wide region when you combine them both together. And I think the less on the interest and more on the breadth of the capabilities to make this represented properly. Particularly because of the already well represented, which is great to see, the 6 or more already have high transit uses to bring to the table those voices. So I just encourage breadth, not interest, but supportive of.
So Deb, if I could jump in real quick to answer Doug's inquiry. We are relying on agencies such as TriMet, such as CTRAN, to work with partners on each side of the river to identify folks that you think will be the right fit for this task.
Oh, okay. Happy to help, Greg. We've just done some recent extensive outreach. And so we've got, and some real deep research we've done, probably the deepest in our history. So we probably can really help contribute on the Oregon side for sure.
Excellent.
Thanks so much, Doug. Next up is Metro and then RTC.
Hi, just started the treadmill unexpectedly on myself. So I think again, like everybody else has been saying, good work on everything. I want to say thank you for listening to the I-205 conversation. And I think Fred Meyer representation is one of the best, because they not only have retail, but they have distribution up and down that corridor. And I think it's really important to get that viewpoint of how things affect the rest of the network as well. So thank you on that. On the transit riders, I would just, encourage us to go, not just to, I think the TriMet user group that they've created is amazing. They've created a whole new universe for their users to be able to connect with TriMet as well as each other. But the Getting There Together coalition also has a lot of active folks, and I think would be good to touch base with at least. So other than that, concur.
Thank you so much, Lynn. Appreciate it. So RTC and then City of Vancouver.
All right. Scott Hughes, I concur completely, and I agree with Kristen Leonard on it. She said exactly what I would have said. So great job, group.
Great. Thank you for that. Much appreciated, Chair. City of Vancouver and then City of Portland.
The City of Vancouver concurs with the list, and we're impressed not only with the wonderful results, but thank you to the staff and the 500 applicants.
Appreciate it. Thank you. City of Portland, and then we'll go to Secretary Millar.
Thank you. We concur with enthusiasm. Thank you, Janelle, Lisa, and Selection Committee for the rigor and the thoughtfulness, and especially for the prioritization and inclusion of tribal governments, tribal voices, communities of color, and the public transit representation. And then I just really want to highlight that these folks are bringing, each of these folks brings 2 or 3 or 4 discrete and valuable perspectives. And so this is going to be such a rich, densely expert and experienced group of people. It's really exciting.
Appreciate it. Thank you. Secretary Millar and then Director Strickler.
Appreciate the work, concur with the list, and encourage the careful care and feeding of these individuals as we go forward. They're a huge part of our success will be understanding where they're coming from and responding to that. So good job.
Appreciate it. All right, and Director Strickler.
Yeah, Deb, I would just add to the long list of things that have already been said. Recognizing that how we listen is really important. So I'm encouraged by the list. I do want to send a special appreciation not just to those on the staff team that have pulled this together, but quite frankly, Co-Chair Ballantyre and Co-Chair Washington, devoting all of their time and energy to make sure we get the right list. Thank you very much. It's truly appreciated as my lights go dark in the room. Truly appreciated. And again, to all of us, and I would put us in this category as well, how we listen to a group like this is really important, and I would dare say has shifted in the transportation world into a more positive place. I want to continue to encourage that as we go forward. So I concur.
Thank you, thank you. Well, I'd like to note for the record that we have full support and concurrence for standing up the Community Advisory Group, for its membership. That is full consensus. And so congratulations to everybody and well done and on doing this. And now for the work to get done, it's very exciting. And just anything else, Greg? Any other words as we wrap this piece up?
And I don't know if we mentioned it, Deb, but we had Lynn Valenter and Ed Washington as interim co-chairs. So we stripped the interim off of their names just recently to, once we constituted the community advisory group, they became full-time. So now they're in deep with all of us.
Yes,
so
they are the official co-chairs now. Yes, and if you remember early last year when people were building these tables, it was said that it was important to have a voice at this executive steering group table during the building of the community advisory group and equity group. And so to Lynn and Ed, thank you for being interim throughout. It made a world of difference having your voices with us. And now you are officially co-chairs. So welcome aboard in all the ways that we can thank you in advance. In wrapping up this piece, I know I said this at the beginning of the meeting, but a couple quick things. One, these slides will all be posted to the website right after the meeting, so they're available to everybody. There will be bios on the members that have been appointed, and we have names. And as the rest are identified, we'll make sure to post those bios. We'll get good information out to everybody. All those meeting dates are already also posted to the website. So as we said, they're going to be swimming fast as of today. So much appreciate. The dates were available, but nothing was going to happen until we heard whether or not this group could be stood up. So this is now officially with your work, Executive Steering Group, full steam ahead. The last thing I did say at the beginning of the meeting, but I'll repeat here in case people came later, is these meetings are also recorded. So if for some reason somebody wants to go back, catch a section, re-listen, grab some popcorn and watch again, feel free. That'll be available also on the website after the meeting. So we are finished with the community advisory group portion, and we now have the update on standing up the equity advisory group. And welcome back, Janelle.
Great, thank you, Deb, and thank you, ESG, for your concurrence. Just a quick update on where we are with respect to the equity advisory group. As you'll recall, in addition to standing up a community advisory group, we're setting up an equity advisory group. So I'll provide just a quick update on where we are concerning that. Next slide, please. Just a refresher, again, the EAG, the purpose is to provide really a laser focus on projects' potential impact and benefits for communities of concern, communities of color, as well as environmental justice communities, really to help us fulfill the IBR leadership's commitment to prioritize equity throughout the course of the program. If we say that we want to center equity, we really need to demonstrate that, and the EAG will help us shepherd that process. They'll help to monitor and provide oversight of equity throughout the program and all elements, and will help and frankly make recommendations to IBR leadership regarding the program's processes, policies, and decisions that have the potential to impact communities of concern, either positively or negatively. Next slide, please. So where we are in terms of the process is, I want to just do a quick shout out to all of your staff yet again, and all of your organizations. You have appointed equity leads that we can work with to learn about all of the great work that all of your organizations are doing to advance equity, but to be a conduit to the program as we develop our own equity practice. And so we met with the IBR equity staff leads. They provided to us recommended organizations to contact for potential appointments. We are in the process of obtaining commitments from selected organizations on both the Oregon as well as the Washington side. We had 59 applications we received for at-large seats. And I'm sure this does not surprise my Southwest Washington colleagues, but as a Portland native, I was struck that the majority of those who applied were actually reside on the Southwest Washington side. So it really speaks to equity being really a strong regional approach. And let me just say the caliber of applicants, really phenomenal. We have been interviewing candidates this week. We'll conclude interviews this week. We have 12 selected candidates that we've been interviewing. And we've also brought on board a facilitator. Many of you will be familiar with the work of Dr. Roberta Hunt. Dr. Roberta Hunt is a professor at Portland State and is really an expert in sort of workforce diversity as it relates to women and people of color, as well as a TriMet veteran in terms of serving on committees at TriMet, was the chair of TriMet's Transit Equity Advisory Committee as well. So really have a great lens by which to kind of help steer this committee. Next slide, please. In staying with the theme with respect to our demographic makeup here is just a snapshot of what we have in terms of our candidates that we are interviewing. 75% self-identified from BIPOC community, 58%, I believe that's, 58% rent, as well as diversity in terms of gender diversity, including non-binary, gender non-conforming, as well as age demographics. As Lisa indicated earlier, it's so important that we have really the next generation engaged in this process. This bridge will be around for the next 100 years. And so how do we really create opportunities for our young people to help shape their built environment? So that's a consideration as well. And then folks who have self-identified disabilities is also a factor here. So very pleased with the level of depth and breadth in terms of diversity. Next slide. So we are running and making plans to fulfill all of our seats for the EAG. Again, our first meeting is next Monday, January 25th, 5:30 to 7:30. We look forward to sharing the results of our process with you in short order, but I wanted to make sure you had that information. So happy to take any questions or comments.
Questions, comments? Lots of information, lots of work. And Janelle, can I ask as a process question, as you finish standing up the EAG, will you be posting to the website if people want to look there prior to the next ESG meeting?
Absolutely.
Where will they be able to find information?
Yeah, that, and we'll be working with the SOG to make sure information is conveyed directly to the ESG as well.
Okay, great.
And as the other thing, Deb, I would say, as well as, again, each of the organizations have appointed equity leads, and the goal of the equity leads is to be conveying information back to the organizations as well.
Great. Okay, Sonia, go ahead.
I have a question, and I think I'm mostly asking for a reminder from the project team, so I apologize. I appreciated, Janelle, your comments about not just committing to equity, but also demonstrating the centering of it. And I feel really grateful for the direct and structured way that we have a touch point and communication with the community advisory group. I cannot recall what the touch points are going to look like with the equity advisory group and how formal or not that's going to be. And so I'm asking because I'm trying to kind of place them in the conversation and think about how we can make sure that that perspective is also centered at this table.
Greg, do you want me to handle that? I'll take a
looking for the mute button.
Yeah.
So this is, we consider the equity advisory group the third leg of the stool of decision making. So their role will be to look at our internal processes, how we do community engagement to make sure that it's equitable, that we're reaching the communities widely and broadly, that we're attempting to get engaged. But they also will be looking at decisions that are made by consensus positions that are made by both ESG as well as community advisory group to make sure that equity has been embedded in those decisions. Everyone on any of these groups are responsible for equity, but this group will be that kind of overview to make sure that things are happening. So they will come in at your request to give you viewpoints and tell you what they see and what they think regarding some of the consensus positions that are reached.
And Sonia, that's an excellent question to build upon that. One of the areas where you'll see this front and center will be around purpose and need and vision and values. So the EAG will be looking through both documents through the lens of equity. And one of the reasons why we are doing the joint orientation of both the CAG as well as the EAG is to really stand up both committees in a way that really centers equity. So there'll be ample opportunity for the back and forth.
Yeah, great question to open up that box, Sonia. Thank you. And thank you for the answers. Anybody else? Oh, yes, Roger, go ahead.
Thank you. And just to get a clarification from Greg, I'm sure I know where he's coming from, but I just want to be real clear. We will be inviting the EAG in, but they will also have license to look around, correct?
Yes, they will be a proactive rather than a reactive entity. So as decisions are made, they will proactively look if the ESG needs someone from EAG to come and explain some finer point. They will be made available to come to ESG, but they will be a proactive group and looking at decision making and setting a framework and establishing a definition of equity for the program itself.
Very good. Thank you.
Great. Anyone else? Questions, reflections at this time? All right. Well, thank you so much, Janelle. And I want to give a special thank you to you and Lisa for the massive lift and the leadership and the guidance and the expertise afforded. This has just merely been since November 30th. So just incredible work. So kudos to the team. Thank you. And then one last wrap up on this piece to those listening here in the audience today. I want to echo what you heard from Lisa and Janelle. If you didn't happen to be selected to be on one of these groups, please know the doors are open wide. There will be multiple opportunities, other kinds of working groups formed over time, lots of ways to engage and to have your voices be heard. So we thank you for stepping into this space and for participating. And thank you again. I think we're ready. We'll do a pretend break. Everybody stretch and jump up and down. And now here we are back again. Thank you. Moving on to the next section. That worked, right? You got to pretend break. So the next section, Greg, if you could go ahead and kick off. We are going to talk about information and feedback, updating purpose and need, and establishing community vision and value.
So before I jump into that, I want to draw everybody's attention to the bottom left-hand side of the screen. You will see the logo for the Interstate Bridge Replacement Program. So you will see this as part of our branding as we move forward. It's a part of our website, but we wanted to capture that this was both a local, a regional, and a project of national importance. So that logo is meant to capture that importance. So with that, we are entering into the foundational piece of any program that has impacts to the public, that has federal dollars, and that's the purpose and need and vision and values portion. So this will be an establishment of a foundational piece from which we will, everything else will spring from. So all of our alternatives will be compared to the lens of purpose and need. So I want to address one question of speed, because we are hearing from different corners of the teams that go fast, and then we're hearing from others that says, well, don't go too fast. So what I can assure you is that we will not prematurely cut off any discussion, any substantive conversations regarding that. We have approximately 150 days before we are taking purpose and need to the bi-state ledge group. So we're going to have time for folks to meet numerous times. Before we even take a draft, we will have had approximately 6 meetings of the community advisory group as well as the equity advisory group. So we are going to move along. We are not going to drag our feet, but we are also not going to shortcut or short circuit any discussion, because what that will lead to is Federal Highway Administration or Federal Transit Authority making us go back if they feel that we have prematurely cut off conversations. So I just want to assure this group that we're going to move, and we're going to go forward with alacrity, but we also are going to hear every voice that wants to be heard on this issue and others that come up. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to the team to give you the
Hang on,
information.
I think Doug might have a quick question for you. Go ahead, Doug.
Yeah, no, Greg, I just want to applaud you. Thank you for raising this. I was one of the folks who was in the background, see how can we speed things up, tighten things up, et cetera. And I just want to applaud the team, because I think it's about being efficient, and it's about spending time where it is right to spend time, but moving things along in a responsible, mature way, which we're doing. Just by today, I can tell the efficiency of the meeting is a lot faster. So I've actually seen conscious change just even in the practice of today. So I just want to applaud you for that. So, in all of our busy worlds, yours too, our time is our one intellectual asset we all have. And so I just want to applaud you for moving through things, but stopping when it's needed. That's really important to do. So we can walk and chew gum at the same time, as they say, right? So, and I think you're role modeling that today. So big thanks.
Thank you very much. So with that, I want to turn it over to Chris Regan, who is going to walk us through purpose and need and set the foundation for how we're going to move forward. So Chris, you're up.
Great, thanks, Greg. Really appreciate it. Hello, everybody. My name is Chris Regan, the environmental manager for the Interstate Bridge Replacement Program. Very excited to be here today. As you can tell from our group, there's a lot of great work being done right now, and I hope to share with you some ideas about what we're working with, where we plan to go, and how we plan to get as efficiently as possible to those foundational documents that Greg was talking about. So if I can get the next slide, that'd be great. So our program stands in a fairly unique position. We have over 10 years of prior planning efforts that were focused on how to cross the Columbia River. That prior planning information included a number of resource investigations, conversations. It identified constraints. Some constraints are movable, some are not. And it came up with some ways that we could avoid, minimize, or mitigate for impacts. And those ended up being commitments that were recorded within a final environmental impact statement and a federal record of decision for a previous effort. Of course, that work has sat on the shelf for more than 5 years. In 2019, we began having conversations again, both in Oregon and in Washington, asking how can we start this up? How can we undertake the important work that was investigated before and get us to a place where we have a viable, resilient bridge that crosses for our community? Over the past couple years, we've had conversations with funding. We've hired a program administrator. We've hired an excellent consulting firm, and we've established some of those processes and work processes that we're going to need to create that foundation that Administrator Greg Johnson has just talked about. We're looking at purpose and need and vision and values so that we can get to alternatives that will analyze for impacts to the environment, which will lead us to design and eventually into construction. Throughout this entire process, community engagement will be an important pillar that we're going to work from. So next slide, please. And this really is the substance, the heart of the work that we will be doing in our environmental planning efforts. Evaluating our prior efforts, there was an existing purpose and need statement. Through that purpose and need, there was also a vision and values, which set goals and objectives. That led us to screen alternatives and arrive at a locally preferred alternative. Picking this up 5-7 years later, we have to ask ourselves what has changed. We're collecting data, we're defining how we're going to analyze that data, we're reevaluating the previous work that we did through the National Environmental Policy Act, or NEPA, to identify the current context and constraints. We're looking at updates to planning and regulatory policies and goals and trying to figure out how do those changes affect the purpose of the work we're doing, the needs that are out there. We're taking that information and looking for feedback. We're looking for feedback from you, your staff, the Bi-State Legislative Committee, regulatory agencies, our community advisory group, the equity advisory group, and generally through community engagement. We also have a tribal consultation process we're working through. All of this is going to feed up into creating an interstate bridge replacement program purpose and need statement and an interstate bridge replacement vision and values. That foundational piece of work will push us forward to look at alternatives to figure out how are the purpose and need and vision and values applied within our program to screen alternatives and to come up with a locally preferred alternative. Next slide, please. With the work that Lisa and Janelle has described infused into this diagram here, again, we're taking the information shared from our previous program and bringing that to your staff to help create some ideas of what are the changes that have occurred within the community. How do we reevaluate this and define a purpose and need that meets today's realities? We share that information. We've looked for advice. We look to our advisory groups to help focus our intent and bring this back to you. From that work, the community advisory group, equity advisory group provides input, and we come up with a draft. Our plan is to, by late March, have a draft purpose and need statement and have developed or established community vision and values. That information will be shared with the Bi-State Legislative Committee. They'll give us feedback. We'll bring that back in to our working group. We'll seek alignment. Again, sharing some information for how we've changed that with our advisory group and general community engagement. That will help us focus even further and hopefully arrive at a consensus recommendation for the program. We're hoping to have a final purpose and need statement with established community vision and values by late May that we will then take back to the Bi-State Legislative Committee for their consideration. The underlying foundation of all of this work, getting us to alternatives that will be screened in an environmental impact or be screened further in environmental documentation, is that we will have community engagement, we will have our advisory groups, and we will seek feedback from as many groups and individuals as possible to get us to a successful alternative to solve our existing needs. Next slide, please. And back to you, Deb.
Thanks so much. I'm actually gonna, Josh, can you go back one slide for a sec? So I know we had to do this really fast, and I, number one, want to say there's some really detailed schedules that are on the website and in your meeting packets. They were presented to the Bi-State Legislative Commission, but the words are so tiny because if you take it from beginning to end, it's just really hard to do on the screen. So there's plenty more information. I wanted to spend a minute as a process person on the circles. And if you think about, I want to make sure you're really clear about both timeline, milestones, deliverables, and outcomes. All right. So for purpose and need and vision and values, this is January. The late May piece where you see final with the circle around the Bi-State Legislative Committee is their request, is that a recommendation come from the program to them by the end of May. So if you work it backwards, which is how we people in the process world try to get people to their desired outcomes, that's what the circle sunburst means. If you work it backwards, it means that, well, the other one back halfway where it says late March is they'd like to hear in late March, how's it going? What do you have as some high level draft recommendations? Where are you at? What have you been hearing from your publics, from your community advisory group, your equity advisory group, the outreach and community engagement that you're doing to seek input and feedback into the development of these two deliverables? What are you hearing and what's the status of how it's going? So that's late March, okay? And we're in towards the end of January right now. So we pretty much have kind of a 2-month cycle right now to get us late. We're gonna be literally kicking off after today and beginning the process. We'll come to you in February with a check-in, giving you a chance to talk, to hear how it's going, what's happening. We'll head back out after February, come back again. Your meetings are the third week of each month in March. And then after your March meeting is when that update and information sharing goes to the Bi-State Legislative Committee. They give some feedback and you run another cycle of heading back to the groups, more engagement, trying to head towards written deliverables, doing your best. And I just want to remind you of the ask that comes to this group. We're always seeking your consensus recommendations to the program. So the program wants to know, what do you as an executive steering group recommend that they then take as their final deliverable to the Bi-State Legislative Committee? Okay, so I'm just kind of bookending the January to late May. So Anne, I want to go to you and then Lynn Peterson next. Go ahead.
Thank you. Chris, can you go back one more slide to slide 32, please? In that middle section, the very last bullet, community engagement, what does that look like?
So I can begin this, but our community engagement program has a very robust community engagement plan. There's going to be web postings. There will be opportunities for events to get feedback. I'm not sure if others are here who can share in specific details, but we have a community engagement plan to push forward. Greg, it looks like you've got some additional information.
One of the key events we have, Mayor, is that we're going to have an open house that will be open to the public and will carry on for several days to give people an opportunity to engage with our team, ask questions about purpose and need, as well as vision and values, and give their input as to what they think. So once we do that, we will gather that information and insert it into this to the circular process so everyone can know the additional voices that we are hearing from the community.
Is this open house on a web link, Greg? Is this?
Mm-hmm. It's all going to be posted. Yeah, Greg, it'll all be posted, and there'll be, it's actually a 2-week long open house in the last 2 weeks of February. And so because again, we're in the virtual world, there's going to be opportunities for creative ways to engage with people. And Lisa, I was hoping you'd come back on screen. You can share a little more on this with some of the kind of fun tools that people have been using around the country to try to keep robust engagement during times of COVID. Go ahead, Lisa.
Well, so we have a real value also around meeting people where they are. And so we don't just want to do the online open house. We don't just want to do an interactive and dynamic survey. We want to do some live events too. So we'll be doing a Facebook Live event. We'll do a likely a YouTube town hall event. I mean, there'll be a variety of different things. We also are hoping to be out with our neighborhood associations doing some briefings and community-based organizations. So again, we don't want a one size fits all. We want to do a lot of different things to be able to reach our community. We're open to any suggestions that have worked well with our partners. We're having ongoing conversations about what else we can add to our program, but the actual online open house and survey will be open February 16th through March 1st. So we'll have a 2-week time period there. And then we anticipate being able to bring back to the executive steering group at your March 17th meeting, a report on what we've heard from our community. And it'll have had the opportunity to be presented in front of the community advisory group. So we have their input, the community input before we see you in March.
Lisa, when will we have the link and the flyer on that February 16th event?
We can send that over to you very shortly by the end of the next week. We can send it to you next week.
Great, thank you so very much.
Okay, and President Peterson?
Yeah, if you could go to the next slide. So I'm just going to say out loud what I'm hoping and hopefully get head nods. A lot of these processes can look very linear, and I think you've tried to do a very good job to make it not look linear, that it is iterative, and there are a lot of groups that are trying to weigh in, and we're trying to get feedback from. But I guess I just wanted to say 2 full iterations may not be enough. And while we might get 80% of the way or 75% of the way there by May, I bet there's still stuff we're working on, and I don't want to bring the hammer down too hard. I mean, I hope we have legislative partners that are willing to understand that it might not all be done and there'll still need to be tweaks while we're still trying to meet our timeline objectives. But if we've got a hard deadline to finish this off and be done, then we're gonna run into problems if we need another iteration.
Yeah, well, and I think I'll speak and I'll turn to you, Greg. This is Deb. I think it's wise to observe, and we did strive to show iterative does look like this. And I think, Lynn, there's hypothesis here that it is not from starting with nothing, but there is much to do. And so I think we need to discern, and this is what we're going to be learning in the next 2 to 3 months, how big is the lift and what does it take to really synthesize and coalesce around a purpose and need and vision and values. And, I want to turn back to you, Greg. What I've been hearing as a process person is if what we're learning is this is not enough time, Greg, right? Then there's feedback to the Bi-State Legislative Committee about that. Is that fair to say?
So I was asked a question from one of the members of the Bi-State Ledge group about the timing. And once again, I've learned some hard lessons in my career that you do not short circuit this process, because Federal Highway Administration, who has, and I'll speak to this a little later, who has dedicated a person to our team, they will call us to go back if we short circuit the conversation on this. But one of the things about the green circles, they just don't spin once. They can spin as many times as necessary to reach their goal. So we're not saying everybody gets one spin of the wheel. Folks can take this around as many times as necessary to get there. In the executive steering group, we may have to do some things offline if we need some extra spins at this. So once again, we are not going to prematurely cut off conversation in regards to this or any other issue related to the program.
Thank you. I appreciate that. I just know that the process gets riskier if if we don't have the consensus to move forward from this point that we have with the gold star, the gold medal at the end there. The risk of the project, the risk to the overall project grows higher if we don't minimize the risk at the beginning here. So I appreciate that.
Right. Well, and I think also in the process world, we say you're continually building credibility and earning trust, and to get traction, these pieces, each piece has to be done to be able to earn that credibility. So yeah, so thank you for important words. And Roger, yes.
Yeah, thank you. And just to say what Lynn's saying a little different way, this is probably 75% of our opportunity to add quality to this project. Once we agree on mission, purpose and need, vision and values, it's a comparison of alternatives to that. This is the important work. And if we need to spend more time, I think all of us as partners around this table have to recognize it's not a failure if we don't have a final in May. Rushing to a bad final product is not good business. If we spend another couple months, we spend another year here, it's a lot better than spending 10 years restarting a project that falls apart because we haven't done the good work here. So let's do the good work here. Let's set a schedule. Let's hold our feet to the fire. Let's not dawdle. It's not getting any cheaper. Traffic's not getting any lighter, but let's make sure we do it right. It wasn't on slide 32, but you have the regulatory agencies, but I assume you're in constant coordination, not just with FHWA, but with FTA as well. And the other thing that wasn't specifically listed, and I want to make sure that's happening, is a nation to nation, government to government consultation with our tribal partners. They're not a stakeholder. I mean, they'll be there at the CAG, but they have other rights. And I want to make sure that our process is respecting that and that those conversations are happening in a timely manner so that we have that input and those concerns baked into the purpose and need and the vision and values.
So if I can jump in real quick, I'll answer the last question first. We recognize that the CAG is not the consultation process with the tribal governments. So the CAG is something different where both of these tribes have interests in the local area and have a significant presence here in the Portland and Vancouver area. So that's why those two tribes were invited. But we have been in constant contact with both tribal representatives at the DOTs to give us guidance on the consultation process.
Yeah, because it's more than two tribes.
Right.
No, there is already work to reach out to more than the two tribes. There's sovereign nation contacts and sovereign to sovereign discussions already going on.
Great.
Yeah, we've sent out back this summer. We sent out letters to 32 tribes for their participation in the program. So we've received answers back from some, and others we haven't heard back from whether they wanted to be consulted on the program. Some have told us no. So we're still continuing that process under the guidance of both DOT's tribal liaisons.
Yep. Yeah.
Very good.
Good, important questions and check marks. Thank you. So I have, I'm sorry, Greg. Yes, something else?
Secondly, regarding the timing, once again, our commitment to this team is that we are not going to short circuit, and we understand the importance of keeping a schedule, but we also understand the risk of rushing through issues. So you have my pledge that we will hear out every issue and take the appropriate time to get it vetted. You also have my pledge that I'm going to be the taskmaster to help us stay on schedule. So it's a balance, and I'll make sure that we are considerate of the risk on both sides of that. Regarding the FTA and FHWA, USDOT has come together and has given us a mega project manager, a gentleman who actually comes from the Oregon FHWA, a gentleman by the name of Thomas Goldstein. And Thomas is going to be embedded with our team, and he will represent the federal position, both FTA and FHWA, but that does not mean that FTA will not be a presence in this whole process. So Thomas will be that USDOT representative writ large, but we will also engage with FTA. But the final federal call will go through Tom Goldstein.
Great. Okay, so I am going to help keep us on schedule at this meeting, and I'm going to ask for these last 3 hands, and then we'll have to do a wrap up to move on to other sections. So I think it might have been Ann, Lynn, and then Chris, if I have the order right.
2 quick questions. After the March input on this particular screen 33, I'm going to make an assumption we're going to continue community engagement. Is that correct? Before the May?
Yes. Yep. It'll run the whole way through. Yep.
So in asking all of these questions, did I miss a communication plan? Do we have something in writing, a diagram or something that shows us all the opportunities and what that's going to look like? Can I go to a website and find that link or a diagram that shows how the community is going to be engaged at these different steps?
There is a communication plan, and we're actually going to be, it's part of your February meeting to take a bit of a deeper dive on it, but it will be also on the website. And then we can look, I don't know if Lisa's coming back, if there are any materials we could send our ESG members after the meeting, probably might be nice too.
Absolutely, we will make that happen.
Great, thank you so very much.
Yep, thank you for asking. Lynn?
Yeah, I just wanted to go just a little deeper into not just the community engagement portion of that timeline, but thank you, Greg, for making that commitment to to balance both these things. But I wanted to dig a little deeper into the fact that the assumptions around what data we have and what data we still need and how things have changed, and just say it's really important to look back at the assumptions that were made last time. Right, we had challenges to the basic underlying traffic forecasts and travel assumptions, and now is not going to be any different because we have a lot of unknowns in our society, and some of us feel they're not as great unknowns as others, but we're going to get a lot of questions about that. And I think we really need to go back and look at those underlying traffic forecast models that we did, because it will impact how we craft the purpose and need. And if we are over or under assuming things, then it will affect that need statement. And I think we need to be clear that we feel comfortable with the data.
So we are in the process of having the teams put together their data gathering plans. We're also in the process of getting governmental agreements for folks who are going to help us with the modeling on both sides of the river and help us run models and derive some of the information we need. So those things are going to be going on in parallel with as the purpose and need and vision and values are being discussed. So those will be key elements that will be moving forward in parallel to make sure that we are being efficient with our use of time.
Awesome, thank you. I'm just going to put an asterisk and an exclamation point, one after the other, around traffic engineering, around the traffic engineering assumptions. Just like that's what I'm really worried about. That's where I feel like we need to drill down and make sure that we totally understand those forecasts, how the long-term forecasts and the short-term forecasts are working together. So,
Understood.
Thank you.
Thank you for that, Lynn. Okay, and Chris, your thoughts?
Yes, I was just simply going to add my appreciation to Greg for your response on the process piece, because one of the things that we did learn last time was we certainly have things that we can continue to learn from even after the purpose and need is established. And we certainly have things that will tell us we think we've got it right. But at the end, we do have the ability to say, quite frankly, we may not know that we got it 100% right, but if we can reach that consensus. But I am very certain that if we reach May and we believe that we got it wrong, that will be clear. And so we need to continue to recognize that moment. And I appreciated your iterative response there. I like the discipline of a schedule. I'm a driver. I have that in my mentality. But if we have it wrong, we have to recognize that I'd rather be right going forward and a little bit late.
Agreed.
Great. Thank you so much for that, Chris. Thank you, everybody. Thank you to Chris Regan for the presentation, for Greg for jumping in. Lisa will be sharing community engagement plan after this. These slides are all going to be posted, lots of schedules, lots of information, lots of work to do. So thank you, everyone. We're wrapped up on this piece. Frank Green has kindly agreed to give a 1-minute conceptual finance plan overview, and we'll try to figure out if we need to add this to next meeting or what we do. Hi, Frank, go ahead. Oh, can I, Frank, sorry, while you're coming off mute, to those of you in the audience, if you want to give public input during our very brief public input time, please make sure to be on the Zoom call and raise your hands now so we can get a head count. Go ahead, Frank.
Okay, thank you. So yeah, I'll be very brief, I'll be quick. We've given this presentation to the staff level group, and so we've also extended if there's questions that they have that they can shoot those to us. So one of the key things, and if you could advance the slide for me, please, that we wanted to convey was why do a conceptual finance plan at this point? Well, we were targeted and not targeted. We were in the legislation. One of the milestones was to provide a conceptual finance plan. The purpose was to give decision makers, such as this group in the legislature, a high level sense of the magnitude and a range of potential costs that a program may have. As you see here on this slide, it utilized the best information we had, which was information from some of the old planning work that was escalated into current year of expenditure dollars. And that previous program met the purpose and need before, but we wanted to make sure that we identified a range of costs by looking at, some of the potential changes that have occurred in the last few years, and that we wanted to make sure that this didn't lock us into any single alternative. Next slide, please. And so one of the things that this plan also did was that it looked at several different potential funding sources that might be out there, because one of the key things that we'll know for a program like this is that no one single source of revenue will be able to be utilized to get a program like this funded and moving forward. So next slide. This is kind of the summary of everything that the conceptual finance plan looked at. You see there's a high and a low cost, and it was based on alternatives that were previously identified and evaluated in the EIS before. We also utilized a lot of understanding of what some potential revenue sources are. You see them under the funding assumptions. We looked at state, we looked at user fees via tolls and some different toll scenarios. We look at, any potential federal program that might be out there to really try to figure out what an initial funding gap might be. The funding gap is what the cost estimate is, what the available funding would be, and then what would additionally be needed. And so as kind of the previous part of this presentation today has shown, there's a lot of work for us to do moving forward. This is a very conceptual estimate and finance plan in nature. Moving forward, we're going to work with the purpose and need to help define alternatives that'll give us a better understanding of cost. We're going to continue to turn over every rock that we can and look to every potential source so that we can establish a more realistic understanding of what the potential funding could be. And all of these things, putting this together over the next several years, will allow us to work with our program partners to develop an implementation plan that'll meet that realistic availability of funding. So there's much more detail we can get into. We've tried to do it with your staff, and we can definitely open it up for more questions as we move forward. But it took 2 minutes. Sorry, Deb.
No worries. Thank you for that, Frank. And there's lots of information also on the web from the Bi-State Legislative Committee presentation. Lynn, go ahead.
Thank you. I know that this is a much bigger conversation. I'll probably go over to next time as well, but could you go back to the slide? So what I'm seeing here, Frank, is 4 scenarios where the actual bridge cost is held constant. Is that correct? With basically a high and low for light rail and a high and low for BRT?
No, actually, there were differences in some of the highway elements. For instance, the bridge south of Hayden Island, between Hayden Island and Marine Drive, the North Portland Harbor Bridge, in the low scenario, we're seismically retrofitting it. In the high scenario, we may be replacing it. So there were some subtle differences that we were able to do throughout, without really trying to define or understand what an alternative is. We tried to give a high and a low range for all the modes.
Okay, I guess going forward.
So there were subtle differences.
Got it. Thank you. I appreciate that. What I'd like to see going forward is practical design options for the highway portion and how that's affecting the cost as we go through, and that will affect, that's a whole purpose and need along with the financial plan. And so I don't think we're tweaking highway costs. I think in order to be able to afford this as a by state, we're going to need to really figure out what we can afford. And we need options. We need more options on the table than just having a high or low transit option. We're going to need high and low highway options to pair with them. And so I guess that's what I would ask going forward.
I think Doug wants to say something too.
Yeah, I might just to tag on to the points Lynn's making, and I think a couple of us had a conversation on this in the back room. Is I think as we acknowledging that this is kind of a very high, a simplistic matrix, we also cannot forget the operating cost burden. A lot of times we focus on capital only, and that's sort of the hunting side. We forget the farming side, which you got to go run it and take care of it, and life cycle cost of capital, let alone the operating side. So I think there's another piece of complexity that's going to be needed on. Lynn shared a very appropriate dimensional side of this. I would just make sure we've got the operating side included in other considerations as this thing unbundles for everyone's benefit.
All right, thank you. Thank you both. Thank you, Frank, for being efficient. This was going to be high level, so there is much more information on the web with your packet. Please give us feedback if you want to continue this discussion. We'll tell you in just a few minutes what's up on deck for your next meeting. So thank you, Frank, and thank you, Ray Maybe, also for being available. So we're heading into close to wrap up, but first we have our public input and the opportunity. Again, I just want to thank all the attendees listening in the audience, people watching the live stream. Right now, we have one person who has their hand up, and we're going to promote Sam Churchill, who we'll give you 2 minutes to speak. If you could also tell us if you have an affiliation. And then after Sam has his chance to speak, I have on the screen, in case anybody else that's just listening still wants to provide public input, I'll give that information in a minute. So, hi, Sam, go ahead.
Hi, everybody.
Yes.
My name is Sam Churchill. I am not affiliated with anybody, but I'm one of 3,000 people who live under the bridge. And also don't have a car, so I'm coming from that perspective. I really just wanted to say three things. Number one, thank you very much for keeping these meetings open. It really builds a lot of confidence in how the decision is made, and I at least feel better. Number two, you know, we all know what Alaska Way was like, and I living on the island, I don't want an Alaska Way overhead. If the bridge is twice as high, that's what we're going to have, and I'm wondering if enough. I personally, nobody likes a lift, but if there were a seismic option for a lift of some kind that could lower the bridge height, so we don't have like a 45-foot high viaduct, I think that would be a much better livability situation on the island. Well, that's that's a first comment, and the second comment. You know, I guess, and next month in Las Vegas, they're going to open up the loop, which is a 0.8 mile underground Musk electric vehicle delivery system. Well, you know, I would like somebody's opinion on it. I realize it doesn't have many advocates here, but it was very compelling. I mean, if they can build it for $10 to $50 million a mile instead of maybe 200 million a mile for max, it would be cheaper.
About 20 seconds, Sam, to wrap up.
Okay. Well, I just think that a lot of people are going to wonder what's happening with Las Vegas, and is that applicable here? I'm wondering that. I think other people would too. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Sam, for your comment. And feel free to also offer written comment if you're interested. And to those listening again on the screen, you can email your comments to info@interstatebridge.org. Make sure to say ESG public comment in the subject line. And by phone, you can call 360-905-1560 and leave a voicemail message stating ESG public comment in the message. That will be transcribed, and all of your executive steering group members get any of your written or voicemail public comments before, during, and after the meetings, okay? Also posted on the website. Thank you to our audience. So we are in next steps. I can do them briefly, and after I do next steps, I'll hand it back to Greg to wrap up the meeting. So your next meeting once a month, third Wednesday, 1 to 3. So it's February 17th. We are going to give you an overview of the already launched community engagement activities. It will already be on the website, but we want to give you a deeper dive on that. We'll give you updates and inputs that we're already be receiving from Community Advisory Group and the Equity Advisory Group. And we will give you some more time, some more deeper dive on purpose and need, vision, and values, really kind of introducing the framework today. So digging deeper on those topics. We'll always do action items and summary, and so it goes within that 2-hour window. I do want to mention a couple more things out of the actions from today. One is, as I said at the beginning, we're going to post both the slides and any of these meeting materials up to the website right after the meeting today. We will be sharing with you and be posting to the website the IBR Community Engagement Plan. We're also, as more names come in for that TBD, the to be determined of either CAG or EAG, those will also be posted to the website along with bios to get to learn more about people. And please remember, those meetings are coming up next week. So it's open to the public. We'd love to have executive steering group members attend, anybody that can be there for both of those meetings. Just really excited about moving forward. And then that is it from the process side, except to say thank you for fitting in so well today. And if you want to take down the slides, and Greg will let you do the wrap up.
So I just want to thank everybody for the quality input that we received today. A lot of information we sent your way. And this is, once again, a very busy time for the team. But once again, we're going to take care to make sure that all voices are heard in the process. So this is this is a fun time. This is, we're up, we're running, we're in second gear, and we're going to be talking to the public and hopefully getting great feedback from both you guys, from the public, from our community advisory group. And we're going to take this thing and get it done right. So thank you so much.
Thank you, Greg. Thank you for those words. Anybody else? Anything else? Okay, please stay safe, stay healthy. Doug Kelsey, we wish you all the best, and everybody please take care. Bye-bye. Meeting adjourned. Thank you.
Thank you all.